Hello everyone. Quite an intimate gathering. First of all, thank you for coming at this late hour. I know it's difficult. I'll try and make it as entertaining as possible. Start off because usually when I start this presentation and I start talking, then people always ask me, how do you know? What's your credentials for actually talking about these things? So I'll explain a couple of things and about who we are. Fibonatics started 6 years ago as a consultancy. We specialized in payment-related issues, mostly risk management, payment optimization, designing payment technologies. The company was based at the time in Austria, and then I moved, actually my wife made me. I moved back to Israel, and we found out a very interesting fact about Israelis. They don't like to be consulted to. So we decided to change the business and actually start offering a turnkey solution to all of our clients. Today, we've rebranded to Fibonatics in 2015. And actually today we specialize primarily on high-risk merchants, and within the high-risk sector, primarily on what we lovingly known as 6211, Forex, binary options, CFD, algo trading, and everything that is to do, I think the correct term would be financial entertainment. That would be how at least Visa and MasterCard refer to it. In terms of the company today, we have three locations worldwide. We have Israel, Manchester, and Berlin. Close to around 300 plus merchants, 55, actually 57 employees. We hired a couple of more people this week, spread around these three locations. And we've been doing this for a very, very long time. I'm going to talk about a couple of issues that are problematic. I think a couple of issues that we see a lot in both our hats as a consultancy as well as a PSP. And we're going to talk about how to do these things that are very, very small and minor things, but we're going to talk about how to do them better. Since it is a very intimate environment, I'd like to ask you to feel free to stop me, ask questions in between. Tell me you have no idea what you're talking about, and maybe try to have more of an open discussion that we can do since it's a very small group. First thing I'm going to talk about is payment page optimization, and a lot of people like to talk about what you should do. I like to focus on what you shouldn't do. Now, if any of these examples are familiar for you, you have a problem. And I'm going to start first with a couple of best practices. So first of all, and one of the key things that we try to explain to merchants is that payments are the end of a process. And when you design your business and when you design the logic behind your business, you need to take payments and the ability of taking money from people. You need to take this into account in the whole, let's call it, vibe of your business. I used to work when I was in Austria with a lot of startups. You had companies setting up a business, sitting for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, designing every aspect of the business, then going to market and finding out, yeah, I have no money, way of taking money from people. So that would be a very bad example, and it often leads people to adopt solutions that are not optimal and give out a completely different customer experience to what people feel on the website. One of the things that we talk a lot about is what we call the paradox of choice and what we call customer funneling. So oftentimes you hear people come to us and say, look, I want as many options as possible. I want to be able to offer 300 different payment options on the website, 400, 500, whatever. First of all, some of these payment options are not relevant for you because you don't target these markets. Secondly, even if they are relevant for you because it is a payment option that is used in a certain market, there are other parameters that you need to take into account. Let's just take the simplest one, money. Each payment option has a different price. You might have a client that wants to use a certain payment option that costs you 9.5%. But if you actually don't have that option, he will use a different payment option that is also fine with him, but it costs you 2%. So why spend money on that? Just because you gave them a choice doesn't mean that they will take the choice that is good for you. And in addition to that, know your target audience, and you need to design the payment page accordingly. We've seen a lot of cases. I'll just give you the simplest and dumbest example. A person targeting the Arab-speaking world, the payment page is in English. The person tries to swipe his card, gets an error message in English. He doesn't understand English, he has no idea what the error message means, and he tries to swipe his card. He tries to do it 20, 30 times, not realizing that the error message means that we don't support American Express, for instance. So this is a very simplistic example, but you'll be surprised at how many times we come across this. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So this is bad example one. What you can see here is this is an actual payment page from a merchant. You can see here there are a couple of options here in place. You have credit cards, then you have 3D secure deposit, then you have 3DS deposit, then you have credit card hybrid, which I don't really know what it means. It's a very bad example, because if I go to the website and I reach this payment page, I as the cardholder have no idea what I'm supposed to use. Where should I put my card details? Should I put it here in credit card? Because I have a credit card, but my credit card supports 3D. So should I put it here? Should I put this one? Maybe my credit card is a hybrid. I don't know. Should I put it there? And this causes a lot of confusion for cardholders. Causes a lot of wasted time. So it's confusing. The cardholder choice is here at random, and here it's connected to for each and every one of these tabs. It's actually connected to a different PSP with different acquirers in place, and you might be paying here 7%, and you might be paying here 1%, but you're basically leaving this decision to the cardholder. You might be 10% chargeback ratio here and 2% here, but again, you're leaving the choice to the cardholder at random. In addition to that, there are many credit cards in the world. It's kind of unclear with the description here. Does this support Visa, MasterCard, American Express, China Union Pay? My card is a credit, is a debit? Sometimes people don't know. Very, very unclear. And as a result, this doesn't work well. And how do we see that it doesn't work well? We see a lot of declined transactions. We see a lot of transactions getting to places they shouldn't get to. We see a lot of repeated attempts, even though it should be clear after one, maybe two attempts maximum that it's not going to go through. And this, at the end of the day, wastes a lot of time, wastes a lot of money, and just gives an overall bad taste to the user experience. I'll give you another example, slightly better, but still a bad example nonetheless. Here what you can see is, first of all, they have put in a couple of logos just to make it clear that Visa and MasterCard and Maestro are accepted there, but American Express is not, because you don't have the logo. On the other hand, you still see credit and debit card option 2. Again, it's very unclear to me as the user, what option should I use? Should I use option 1? Should I use option 2? It's again very, very confusing, and at the end of the day creates a very bad user experience. Another bad example, this is something that we slightly started to touch on. Everybody likes to have at the footer or on the payment page or at some point on the website, they like to see logos. They like to see a lot of different logos. First of all, specifically, this merchant is not using some of the payment options that are here. For instance, Western Union is not using, Cashier is not using, InPay is not using. Even WebMoney is not even targeting the market that WebMoney would be relevant for them. But a lot of really nice logos, so why not put them on the website? Everybody likes logos. They're colorful. They add to the website. And again, even if the merchant had support for all of these payment options, we wouldn't recommend using them. Again, there are differences here between payment options in terms of pricing. Some payment options are more expensive than others, so why use them unless you have a choice? Unless you, don't have a choice. In addition, some payment options can help you with conversion, can help you achieve a higher approval ratio. And again, I would maybe direct the cardholder or the user, the trader, towards these payment options if I know that this is problematic. Why give someone, let's say, from India or from Ghana, as a good example, the possibility of trying to deposit with credit cards when you know it's about 7% approval ratio? Why not direct them into other solutions that they will have a higher approval ratio? Even if it's a more expensive solution here, there is good justification, there's business logic behind doing this. In addition, security features. Sometimes people might say, look, I am willing to pay more money, but at the end of the day, I don't want to be exposed to chargebacks, I don't want to be exposed to fraud, I want to use other systems in which people don't abuse the dispute mechanism. So this is also a parameter. And again, user friendliness. Some payment methods rely on redirects, some payment methods rely on transferring you to an unknown website hosted somewhere else that everything looks, the font looks small, the colors, they don't fit your look and feel of the website, then why use it unless you really have to? And all of these parameters should be taken into account. And when you design the payment page and when you design your payment system, you need to take this into account and you need to say, okay, what is the logic? What do I want to achieve? Where are the problematic markets that I have? Where are the problematic areas that I need to improve? And the payment page, because it's the end of the process, needs to reflect this and needs to support the business logic and not the other way around. And oftentimes we see people just have really bad payment pages, have no logic behind them. They have no idea or justification on why are you using this? Why does it look that way? Part of the answers are just, that's the way it is. And we often find that when we ask questions, even from clients that have been in business for 3, 4, 5 years, and we ask them, why are you doing things in a certain way? We don't really get any satisfactory answers. So hopefully you're not one of these people. Last is something that we, well, now it's kind of calmed down a bit, but we saw this a lot about 1 year ago. So we started seeing a lot of advertisements. There had also a lot of push coming from Google. You have to have a mobile-friendly website. You have to have a responsive website. You have to support this. Because, and you see this pop up all the time, a bad mobile website costs you 40% of your business. And people started, taking attention and they started to freak out about this. And we saw people investing tons of time, tons of money into having a mobile-friendly website and a mobile-friendly payment page when about 2% of their business was done with mobile devices. So why spend the time, why spend the money? In addition to that, this also relates to the payment methods that you use. You might have a completely responsive website, best mobile experience in the world, but then you go to the payment option, you choose a payment method that doesn't support mobile, and everything is small, everything is doesn't seem very well, you can't see it on the mobile, doesn't even work, doesn't allow you to do redirects. You're using Chrome, then it suddenly pushes you to Safari. A lot of very bad user decisions, and you need to, again, take this into account before you decide on investing time and money into that. And unfortunately, this is not often enough the case. The next thing I want to talk about, unless there are any questions about that. Not all at once. Okay. How to use payment rates to divide and conquer. So again, we've talked a bit about the payment pages and how you can funnel customers towards certain areas. Oftentimes when we look at merchant traffic and we ask people how you divide your traffic, we get answers that are between ridiculous and idiotic. And I want to talk about a couple of examples like this. First of all, a couple of good quotes. So there is little difference in people, but that little difference makes a big difference. And oftentimes, We see that when we talk to merchants, they don't realize that not all people are created equal, and you can't treat a transaction coming from country A as though it's the same as country B. You need to look at how to mitigate risk. So some countries are more prone to fraud, some countries are more prone to chargebacks. You need to look at how to increase conversion ratios by choosing the right payment option for the right market. You need to reduce costs, again, because certain partners might be better at certain markets, but they might cost more, and that at the end of the day, in the general conclusion, it might not make it worthwhile working with them. And there are also a lot of politics involved. You also need to understand, okay, this might be a more expensive partner, but I do want to keep him on board, and I need to keep him happy because who knows, I might need their help one day. So all of these things need to be considered before deciding on how to split traffic. So let me give you a couple of additional bad examples. The first example is what we call the even splitter. So the even splitter would work like this. So he's connected to 3 acquirers or 3 PSPs, doesn't really matter, and they decide to split the traffic the following way. From the first 10 days of the month, I'm going to send all of the traffic here. These 2 are not going to get anything. Then I get to the 20th of the month. I'm going to shift all of the volume to acquirer number 2, run this for a couple of days, and then shift everything to acquirer number 3. You might ask, okay, what's the problem with that? Hopefully, I hope you're not asking what's the problem with that. This creates a lot of issues. We actually met with a merchant about 2 months ago. Very big company. You would expect that they've been around for a couple of years. You would expect that they would know better. And this is how they do it. So we asked them, okay, how many acquirers do you work with? They said 4. Okay, what's the logic? How do you decide on where the traffic goes to? And they told us we have thresholds for pricing because we have tiered pricing. So we start with the first one, and once we hit the lowest tier for the lowest price, we stop processing there, and we move on to the next one, and then we hit the tier, and then we move on to the next one, then we hit the tier, and then we move on to the next one. So this is the logic of the business, and it's okay, it's just not. So the problems with this is, first of all, this acquirer suddenly sees on the 11th of the month a drop in volume from, in that case, a couple of millions to 0. So obviously it freaks out all of the risk management people. Suddenly they don't see any payments going through. So what happened? What's the situation? In addition to that, you don't really take into account that the traffic is coming from a lot of different sources. And maybe acquirer 1 is not the best candidate for all of your traffic, and you need to split it in a different way. Another bad example is the cascader, slightly more common example. So I have a transaction, and this acquirer is the primary acquirer. Then I have the second one and the third one. So I'm going to take the transaction, try to process it with the acquirer number 1. If the transaction succeeds, great. If it fails, I'm going to take the same transaction and try and process it with acquirer number 2. Again, if it goes through, great. If it fails, then I'm going to send it to acquirer number 3. Again, a lot of people, when I ask them what's the logic behind this, they give me the justification that I don't want to lose out on money. Maybe an acquirer number 2 and acquirer number 3 is taking some of these transactions, are going through, so see, everything is working. The problem with that is a couple of problems. First of all, it costs you money, sometimes a lot of money, and sometimes wasted money, because why send transactions here that have no chance whatsoever of going through? For instance, why send transactions where the error message is the people don't have money on their account? It's not going to go through here. It's not going to go through there. Acquirer number 3 is not going to magically add money to their account. So why do that? Secondly, what you have to understand is oftentimes these transactions, when you do use cascading, the transaction is sent simultaneously or almost simultaneously to 3, 4, 5, etc. acquirers. So the issuer sees that there is a transaction being made from a certain card in 3 different locations at almost the exact same second, and this usually triggers a lot of automated fraud systems and makes a lot of risk managers unhappy. We've had cases that when merchants started working that way, they saw an increase, a momentary increase in the short term of slightly improving their conversion and their approval ratio, but after that they were blacklisted by the relevant issuers and the big issuers that have these fraud scrubbers, and then obviously the approval ratio decreased significantly more than their short-term gain from this. So again, very bad method. We see this a lot. Can't say enough on how much I hate this thing. What we recommend is to do the following thing. We look at statistics. We don't look at anything as a case by case. And everybody thinks, and we hear it a lot, no, but my case is unique. You don't understand my business. You know, everything we do is different than everybody else. True, but when I look at everyone and I look at the countries and I look at the industries and I look at the merchants, there's statistics. And statistics doesn't lie, and statistics can help me predict how your users are going to act when they come to a certain payment page and when they approach a certain acquirer. And what we recommend is actually building something that would support the business logic and would allow you to actually squeeze this lemon and make the most of the situation. And I'll give you an example. Just an example of a payment array. So what you can see here is you can see that the logic that goes behind the decision on where to send the traffic. So you can see here transactions that are above 251 units and coming from Canada should be directed to 3D Secure. Why? Because we've noticed that they have, for 250 euro transactions that are generated through affiliates, we saw a lot of fraud reports coming from Canada. So we wanted to combat this. But the affiliates had a problem with 3D Secure, so we had to shift it between the two of them. Then again, with the UK and Malaysia, good markets for them, good affiliates, so we can apply different logic. So you can see in this case, the logic and the way we've structured the payment array is just based on amounts because of the way they work with affiliates, and also based on countries because of the countries where the affiliates are bringing the traffic from and their main markets. What you can't see because I've blocked it is that each one of these is actually a different acquirer. So we've also managed to split the traffic and also to make sure that on the one hand, traffic gets to acquirers that have a better approval ratio in certain countries. And in addition to that, what we've made here is also made sure that the business logic supports the risk management. And we've also ensured, you can see it here, by checking also the different percentages of where we send the traffic, also to support some of their decisions in terms of pricing and the tiered pricing that they had in this case. So everything can be done. It's just you need to think about it before you decide on what to do. Sorry, I need a minute. Any questions until now? You're not asking because you're ashamed to say, you know, I'm also part of these people, or everything is clear, and we're just making fun of the people that work like that. Okay, take the second option then. The last thing that I want to talk about is how to look at risk management. I hope I'm not you know, surprising anyone, but even though card schemes look at 6211 in general, but Forex and binary as low risk, it is the higher side of the spectrum of the high risk industries. The main reasons why it's on the higher side of the spectrum is because the ticket size tends to be higher than, let's say, gambling, for instance. Plus, when people go into a casino, doesn't matter if it's a physical one or an online casino, they go in with the mindset that I'm going to lose money, but at least I'm going to have some fun doing that. When people go into a Forex or a binary or a CFD broker, their mindset is I'm going to make a lot of money because obviously I know everything about the market. And this mindset coupled with the big ticket size causes them to be very angry when they lose money and abuse the dispute mechanism as a way of taking it back. So there are a lot of approaches to risk management and how we can prevent this from happening. And I want to talk about a couple of best practices and things that, of course, are bad examples. The first thing that I want everybody to understand is that there's no wonder tool that can prevent fraud or chargebacks. And I hear it a lot from, first of all, from people that sell such systems. We have the wonder tool that can stop fraud, it can prevent everything. There isn't one tool that can do that. And I hear it also from merchants that often tell me, you know, I don't need to collect KYC, I don't need to check for fraud because I'm using this or that, and now everything is going to magically disappear. So, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time. It's not going to happen. So if anyone had this expectation that you're going to use something and you're going to not encounter chargebacks or fraud, it's not going to happen. The second thing that you need to understand, and we've talked about this, is that cardholders often abuse the dispute mechanism in order to get their money back. And I mean, it's very, very common. And what we see is there is sort of a process with cardholders, sort of an educational and enlightening process. So the first time that something happens to you as a cardholder, so you would, there is a legitimate, let's say service-related something that happened to you. So you put money somewhere and somebody actually did something bad to you. And then you go and you do the chargeback process. And then you find out that it took you 5 minutes to get your money back. And then suddenly you have this light bulb moment that you say, hey, they didn't ask me a lot of questions and they gave me my money back pretty fast. Why don't I start doing it more often, even in cases that are not legitimate, especially if I'm losing a lot of money? And we saw this in gaming, and we saw this also in Forex, and then in binary, and it just continues to happen. And unfortunately, this is just getting worse and worse. In addition to this, fraudsters, as well as dishonest cardholders, are constantly adapting their MOs and are looking for new ways to get their money back or to scam you. So you also need to adapt. And even if you have managed to find this wonder tool and it did have a dramatic effect on your risk management, it's not going to last for long. So within 2-3 months maximum, you're going to start seeing new methods. And one of the first things that we tell our risk managers and our clients as well, and this is why we discuss a lot with our clients about risk management, is you have to trust your gut feeling. Sometimes everything looks kosher, but you have this feeling that something is off. If it feels off, it usually is. And the level of naivety for people in this industry trusting everything is just beyond puzzling, I would say. So a couple of examples for adapting fraudsters. This is a case we've had about a year and a couple of months ago. So you can see, So you can see here you have cardholders coming from Canada. So you have João Flores, you have Rodney S. Gareb, also from Canada, Ria Plaza, Patrick Dolan, all of them Canadian, different Canadian cards, some of them Visa, some of them MasterCard, different addresses. So everything looks legit, but the IP address is in Pakistan, and the same email address appearing on all of them. Farouk Ahmed Khan, probably not the email address that João Flores would choose, and it starts appearing all the time. This is fraud 101. This is basic fraud. Today, fraud is adapting. So this was a case about a year and a half ago. This is a case from 2 months ago. So just we started with one card from Malaysia. Then we've noticed that the email address, but just the first part, was also used with other cards from Malaysia. And then we've noticed that also that card was used with other users that led to other users that led to other users to other cards. And at the end of the day, everything is connected and everything is one fraudulent ring with close to 50 different cards, different identities. All of them provided full KYC. And some of this KYC I will show you. Couple of Australian passports. So on a first glance, everything looks legit. These are passports that were submitted, different transactions, different merchants, different cards. The only thing that was common was this finger. So the risk manager looked at this document and said, I recognize this finger from somewhere. And then he started looking back, and then he saw, okay, on this one I see the same finger, the same bathroom tiles. And then he started actually looking at the passport. This guy doesn't really follow the Kardashians, but somebody else in the company did. So you always have to keep people that are appraised of pop culture. This is Kendall Jenner, and she's not male, as far as I know. So this is a clear case of fraud. And then we started searching for this finger. We found out close to 30 different other cases of using forged, all of them forged passports, all of them Australian passports, Australian cards, full KYC, utility bill, and everything was forged. So trust your gut feeling and don't think that nobody at risk management school taught me about search for fingers, but you know, something felt off and they followed it, and this is a very good example. Yep. That's a very good question. It's good that I keep you here. The good answer to this would be it depends. It depends on the industry, it depends on how you work, it depends on how much weight you can pull with working with affiliates. There are different ways of tackling this. So we do know that certain merchants, they collect KYC, and then they credit the person's account, and then they allow them to trade, or they give them sort of a demo account until they've managed to verify the ID of the person. Others employ a mechanism maybe of pre-authorization and capture in order to do that. How many people know what that means? Okay, one. So every sales transaction is actually made up, so sorry if I'm repeating something, but every sales transaction is actually made up of two transactions. You have pre-authorization, where we approach the card issuer and we say, look, there is this guy, he wants to put in $500, this website, do you approve this? And then they would say yes or no. And in capture, basically we come into the issuer and we say, you remember that transaction that you approved, now I want the money. So a sales transaction, both of these things will be sent simultaneously. So we would say, approve the transaction, now give me the money. We can split these things, and we can have for, again, for Forex and for 6211, it's a maximum of 6 days. We can separate these two things. Now, why would we do that? As long as you don't take the money, as long as the transaction is not captured, you can't report it as fraud and you can't charge it back because money hasn't actually been taken. So this allows us sort of but if you pre-authorize the transaction, we've actually captured that amount in the person's account. So what we would have is I'm taking the money, I'm verifying that you actually have the money in order to deposit, but I'm waiting with actually taking it from you until I've managed to verify that you are actually Kendall Jenner and you are male. This has been very good, not just in reducing fraud, but it's also been very helpful in reducing your actual costs, because oftentimes, especially in the industries that are more affiliate intensive, the affiliate sends, forgive me all of the affiliates, they send crap traffic. You don't know that it's crap traffic until you actually try calling the person and you realize no one is answering. The person tells you, leave me alone. But you've paid for it because you took the initial deposit. So by using pre-authorization and capture, you haven't actually taken the initial deposit, so I don't have to pay for it. And then if within, we recommend 72 hours. If within 72 hours I can't actually contact the person, then you know it's crap traffic and sorry, but I don't want to take your money, because often it will become a chargeback or fraud. Thank you. Any additional questions?
Could you not just have, say, a set of rules, risk rules in place where the slide before you had the IP from Pakistan, so
Yeah.
you use IP or geolocation, that would flag up on your rule system, then you could pre-authorize the card, and then based on your own risk assessment or profile of that client, you can alternatively KYC them before you allow that transaction to go through, or you can do on-the-spot call if you feel like it's shady, reject it, so unfortunately we need full KYC, and then you can really critique some of that information. Use other services like Jumio, some of the GP Group, or others to verify some of the KYC. That's how I would approach it.
Yeah, I think the answer to your question is it's not whether you could, you should do that. Because oftentimes you need to separate this between countries. You have certain countries that, for whatever reason, might be mentality, might be cultural, might be simply the fact that issuers don't know how to fill chargeback forms. You don't see any problems there. So there is no reason to apply these rules as a blanket cover for everything. You need to look into it, not just based on country, but also based on the affiliates that you're working with, your trader behavior. You do have traders that sometimes, we have merchants telling us, look, I'm not using 3D Secure. I'm not using any method of fraud prevention other than my gut feeling. So I know that people, for my website, they come in on a Monday between 6 o'clock in the evening until 9 o'clock. And this is when they do the transaction. So if I see a transaction on a Sunday, automatically all the alarm bells ring, and I know that this is fraud. So even if I'm 90% certain and 10% are false positives, it's still a good indication. So you
And also you have to be quite flexible. So you could have a trader that's troublesome.
yeah.
You don't want to upset a good client, but at the same token, you need to have those checks and balances when you do. There's on-the-spot calls because they appreciate that you're looking after their money technically.
Exactly. I think that if I had to summarize everything that I've spoken about today to one sentence, it would be: use your head for something other than a coat rack. Because you need to understand your business, you need to understand what you do, and it's fine if you have this attitude of, I know how to sell, I rather outsource everything else to somebody else. That's fine, but at least trust the people that you outsource it to and make sure that they do a good job with that. And oftentimes, not just with small merchants or people that are new to the industry, we see even big clients that are they're working with systems that are not good for them. I'll give you an example. We had a merchant, very big e-commerce merchant, selling. They design security systems, physical security for Apple products. So if you go to a trade show and there's it's like an iPad and it's connected to the stand, this is what they do. And they also have products for private users, and they sell online. And what do they use in order to sell? They use, I'm not going to mention the name, but they use a PSP that is specializing on the adult industry. And all of their solutions are tailored to the adult industry. And they have terrible approval ratio, and they don't understand why. Because they started this about 5 years ago. Somebody told them, yeah, I can connect you very fast. And now they're working with this for 5 years without asking any questions.